So today, we're gonna be doing the mod that I'm most excited about for the Camaro ZL1. We're gonna be installing a new steering wheel because there's quite a few things about the OEM steering wheel that I just can't live with. And so today, I'm gonna show you exactly how to install it safely, and hopefully we can install it without breaking the clock spring as well. Back when I started the Civic Type R build, one thing that I noticed about that steering wheel was I just didn't like how skinny the wheel was. I don't really have that large of hands. I would say they're like medium large, but they're not like giant hands. But I felt like when I was gripping the steering wheel, I just didn't have anything to hang on to. Then when I got the Camaro ZL1, because it has the A10 automatic transmission and paddle shifters, something I feel like is when I'm driving, I like to keep my, fingers at 10 and 2, when I'm trying to do some spirited driving. Well, the problem is there's no ergos on the stock steering wheel. And also it tends to be pretty thin right here. So when I'm actually here driving, I feel like I'm pinching the steering wheel, not gripping it, if that makes sense to you. The other thing I can't stand about the OEM steering wheel is Alcantara. Now, I've never had an Alcantara steering wheel. There's two reasons I don't like Alcantara. Number one, when you're not wearing gloves, it's super slippery. I mean, extremely slippery. There's times where I'm driving it and I just feel like my hands are just gonna slide at any time. Now, I understand it's developed for the track, and on the track you typically wear gloves, but I like to drive my car on a daily basis if I can, so it doesn't really do me any good. The second thing I don't like about it is when you do drive it a lot, especially without gloves, it gets really matted over time, and it just starts looking like butthole after a while. So I wanted to get rid of the Alcantara. I was trying to find just a chunkier steering wheel. I was trying not to spend a ton of money, but unfortunately with the Camaro ZL1, you're not gonna really find one for less than $1,000. All right, guys, so here we are up close with the steering wheel. I ordered this from Vivid Racing. I originally started looking around at all the different companies that offer steering wheels for the Camaro SS/ZL1 6th gens. And it was interesting, a lot of the companies that I saw, they would say oh, it's $1,000, or I saw one that said, oh, it's $750. But then as you go through and you customize and add carbon fiber, add perforated leather, it came out to $1,300 or $1,400. And plus they all have a core charge that you receive back when you send them your OEM steering wheel. And usually by the time I was done configuring, even after I get the core charge refunded to me, I was gonna be out about $1,300, $1,400. And I was like, man, that kind of sucks. I would rather not spend that much on a steering wheel. And the guys at Vivid Racing, I did a lot of work with them when I built my Civic Type R, and I hit them up and it's like, hey, do you guys have anything for the Camaro? And they're like, actually, we do. The way that theirs works is you go to their website. I'll make sure to put a link in the description to where you can get the steering wheels. But there's about an 8-week lead time. You put in your order, you take a photo of your steering wheel and send it to them so they can make sure the controls are correct. But they happen to have one just in stock. And so I didn't customize this one. However, it's almost exactly what I would have ordered anyway. And we'll talk about a couple differences here in a minute. But as this sits right here, this was $1,000. However, I will say this one just happened to be in stock, and I bought it for $1,000. But however, when you go to their website to configure one, if you add carbon fiber paddle shifters, it's an additional $300. And then if you add to retain the heated steering wheel, that's another $150. Now, I don't know if this one has a heated steering wheel retained. I don't really care. I live in Phoenix. I'm never gonna use it. So I can't tell you if it is, but we'll find out once we install it. Also, because this was one that they had in stock, and this isn't one that I custom ordered where I would have sent them a photo, this piece right here, I am gonna have to swap over, because on my car, this little button right here where you see a little LED light, on my car, that's actually the accident avoidance button. And so that's the only way you can turn on and off accident avoidance. So I am gonna have to swap this module over, but everything else came with it. And on their website, it says if you order a custom front, custom trim like this carbon fiber here, it will come with all the controls. If you don't get the custom trim, you will have to swap over both of these as well as these. So thankfully, I only got to do one of them. Now, if I would have custom ordered this one, there's only one thing I would have done different. I would have got matte carbon fiber. And the reason I say that is I have two concerns about gloss carbon fiber. Number one is heat. Arizona, 110 to 120 degrees in the summertime. I don't leave my car parked outside, but if I happen to go to the store, leave it for 20, 30 minutes, that interior gets to be about 160 degrees or more sometimes. The good thing is though, because this is perforated, I don't have to grab the steering wheel up here, but it is just something that does have me a little bit concerned in regards to not having a full leather steering wheel. The other thing that concerns me about gloss carbon fiber instead of matte is I worry about sun glare. I don't know what it's gonna be like. I've never had a carbon fiber steering wheel. My other one's just completely leather. And I'm worried that maybe the sun will hit this at the wrong angle and just reflect right into my eye. If that does end up happening, I'm actually gonna do an entire separate video. And what we'll do is we'll scuff this down and we will mask everything off and we'll respray the top, these bezels, and the bottom portion with a matte clear coat. That way I can eliminate the glare if it does tend to be an issue. And like I mentioned earlier, the one thing I couldn't stand on the OEM Camaro is it has a little hump right here for your thumbs, but it doesn't really have anything over here. And on this one, you can see how this raises up right here, and it gives you a little bit more ergos for your thumbs. So when you're driving right here, it feels comfortable. On the OEM steering wheel, I found myself wanting to grip up here. And the problem with that was I couldn't reach my paddles if I wanted to use paddle shifters. So that's why I opted to get legitimate extended paddle shifters. I know you can buy the stick-on kind from Amazon or wherever that stick onto your existing paddles, but they look ugly. In my humble opinion, it just doesn't look clean. I wish someone would create extensions that cover the front of it. I mean, because before I bought the ZL1, I was thinking about buying a Nissan GTR. And for the GTR, you can buy carbon fiber paddles that simply slide over your existing paddles and you can't even tell the difference. So I don't understand why you can't get that for the Camaro. And that bugs me because when you stick them on, you'll get a plus sign down here from your original paddle and then the plus sign from the, extension. All right, so the first thing you want to do is we're gonna disconnect the battery. On this car, the battery's in the trunk. And you're just gonna pull this little guy out like that. We're gonna disconnect this negative terminal right here. And then we're gonna let the car sit, I would say, for at least 15 minutes before we start taking that steering wheel off. What that will do is it allows the car to completely discharge. And that way, if your car is retaining any types of charges in it, your airbag hopefully won't deploy. All right, now that that's out, set that over to the side. I hang it outside. That way nothing metal contacts it. Also, it's probably a good idea to leave your trunk open because if you close it, you might not be able to get it back open. So leave that open for now. So for this portion of the removal, you're gonna want a couple of tools. You're gonna want 2 small flatheads. You're gonna want a trim removal piece of some kind. You're gonna want a T50 Torx. And you're gonna want some kind of impact gun. I have seen some people online that said that even the electric ones aren't powerful enough. I know that this one goes up to 300 pounds. I'm hoping that's enough. So my car's been sitting for about 30 minutes now. There's also a fuse under the hood that you can remove for the airbags if you want to as well. It's really hard to see and I can't really get a good camera angle, but where my finger is pointing, there is a hole. And there's a hole on the other side of the steering wheel also. And essentially, you want to take your little screwdriver and push in until you hear a click. And we're just going to pull this airbag as we do this. Can you hear that? Okay, now we're going to do the other side. If you're having a hard time finding these holes, they're just underneath the bottom of the paddle shifter. Okay, so it's starting to move. Come back, and basically what you're doing is you're alternating sides, and you're pushing in, and you're prying it out just a little bit at a time. All right, now the airbag is out. And unfortunately, I can't get you the correct camera angle. And so what you're gonna do is you're gonna take both of these flatheads and you're gonna put them on each side of those clips where the orange tabs are. And you're simply gonna push up on both orange tabs simultaneously and each clip will pop out. Once you get those, now we can work on this red clip that is to the left side of it, and we can remove that one. And there we have it. Sorry, I have my flashlight on, but we got that portion out. All right, guys, so now we've got the airbag out. That's the last thing that we unclipped right there. So now I'm just looking at it. These are the 2 that we unclipped from the back with the orange tabs. Pull those up. Now, one thing we do have to be careful with here is if you look where my finger is pointing, there is a black piece of plastic back there. That's our clock spring. And sometimes that clock spring sticks to the steering wheel. If you pull it out, it will actually break the clock spring. And you either A, have to buy another clock spring, or you have to figure out how to spool all this ribbon cable that will pop out of it back into it. And there is a trick to it from what I'm told, and we'll see if it works here in a second. But the next thing is we need to take a T50 Torx and try to get this pig out. I really hope this works. I'm not using impact specific bits, but this is all I have and we're gonna try it. I got the torque on this thing turned completely up. Yeah, I guess those guys were right. That thing does not budge at all. So the other channels were right. The electric impact wrenches aren't strong enough to take this off, and I don't have a breaker bar. And the reason that this is so tight is because it has blue Loctite on it. Well, knowing what I know about Loctite, you can't use PB blaster, but you can use heat. So I have my soldering iron here, and I'm gonna turn up the heat really high, and I'm gonna take this and I'm gonna put it right into the center of this bolt. And I'm gonna let that sit for a while. I'm basically just gonna let that sit and then get this thing nice and hot. Hopefully the heat transfers pretty good, but I'm just gonna hold this here on the highest setting that my little soldering iron goes to, and then hopefully that will loosen the Loctite and we can just back it out with the impact. Let's try that. I doubt it, but we can try it. Nope, not yet. We'll just keep heating it. Okay, so I just wanted to interject real quick. So you know how I was talking about like, oh, I don't want to break the clock spring on my car. Well, I did break the clock spring, but I didn't break it in the way that most people break it. Yeah, let's head out to the garage and I'll show you what I did to break it on accident. So this is the clock spring that I screwed up. When I was heating the bolt, it melted this connector piece right here. And unfortunately, I can't plug my airbag back into that. And that's why I had to buy a new one. Moral of the story is use an air impact wrench if you have one. I don't have one. And unfortunately, I was gonna have to go somewhere to use one, but there was nowhere I could go to use it and do the complete install. Not in a timely fashion. So that's what I messed up. Now on our new clock spring, it's exactly the same. The only thing you gotta keep in mind is, number one, leave this orange tab in until it's completely installed. This is keeping the clock spring from spinning, which is a good thing, because if it gets out of whack, your steering angle is all gonna be wrong and the computer's gonna be all messed up and you could break it again, so you don't wanna do that. These are the four corners that the screws need to be removed from. And then when a lot of people are installing aftermarket steering wheels, the problem is this face right here sometimes is stuck to the back side of the steering wheel. And so when they pull the steering wheel out, this comes with it, and there's a ton of ribbon cable inside of here that comes out with it. Either A, you have to fish and feed all that ribbon cable back in and hope that it works. But a lot of times, even if you do put the ribbon cable back in, this piece just will not continue to work. So it is a sensitive piece. Now, when you are gonna reinstall this, you wanna make sure that your front wheels are completely straight, and that way the sensor will be in alignment with where the wheels are. All right, so once you have your steering wheel off, there is a little bolt right here where my finger is, just underneath the steering column, and it is a 7mm socket. And so we gotta take that off. All right, I'm just gonna stick that in my cup holder here so I don't lose it. I don't feel any other sockets or anything around here, but I can see that this bottom half and this top half, they can separate. I just gotta figure out how to actually separate them. The top piece is the one you're gonna pry first. So the way I did it was I wedged this tool right here in between the clock spring and the plastic housing, one on this side, and it pushed it up, which revealed two more sockets that we need to remove, one on the left and one on the right. And these are sized, they're also 7mm, just like the bottom one. There we go. And I'm gonna stick these in a different spot than the other screw. That way I just don't get them mixed up. And that should allow us to pull this bottom portion down and out. So now we have the clock spring exposed, and we can see at each of the four corners, at the bottom left, bottom right, top left, top right, is a small Phillips head, and that should allow the clock spring to come out. So I grabbed a couple of different sized Phillips heads. I'm gonna start with the larger one. If it doesn't work, I'll step down in size. Now that those four screws are out, so on the top of the clock spring, up here, there's gonna be two connectors that you're gonna pull out. I think the yellow one on the top is gonna need a flat head so you can depress these little tabs. There's a tab on the left and a tab on the right that needs to be depressed to pull this top yellow connector out. The one on the left is a little bit easier. It's a black connector. It comes out quite simply. This little yellow one is a little bit more cumbersome. On the bottom here, you have another connector that comes out. And then there's another one on the bottom. All right, so this bottom plug that's on the bottom left-hand side of your clock spring, it actually unplugs over here on the right side. It doesn't unplug from the unit itself. I just looked at the new unit to verify that. So you gotta come over to this side over here. So to get this cable out over here, I'll actually show you an up-close shot here in a second. But the way I was able to figure out how to get this cable unhooked over here was to look at the new unit, which we're gonna cover that in a second as well. And you essentially have to take a small flathead and depress a tab to get it to pull out. And the wires that come from this bottom left-hand corner that come over here to the right and connect, they are guided in some clips. So I'm popping those wires out of the clips as we speak. This will all make more sense in a second, but basically we have a fuse that's on this brown wire. And I gotta figure out how to disconnect this fuse assembly from the fuse box. Ah, there we go. There's a little clip you got to pull up on, and then that comes out like so. Like I said, I'll show you all this stuff up close so you can get a better look at it. Now we can get that off, and I can get a better look at this top clip that I was struggling with. I'm not sure why I couldn't get this off. These little tabs that you're supposed to depress down, they just don't want to depress. And so I'm just trying to figure it out to see what's happening here. So I think this top piece has a safety, and it doesn't let me depress them unless I'm pulling out this top. That's exactly what that is. So you can pull it all the way out. Now we should be able to depress those tabs. Again, I'll show you this up close so you can see it, but it was a little bit convoluted. All right, now we're out. Now I'm gonna show you these up close so I can explain a lot about what I was talking about. Okay, so this is the top piece, and these were the two tabs that I was trying to push down to pull out of the clock spring. And this red piece has to be pulled outward with like a flathead, and then these two tabs can be depressed. So just wanted you to see that. Also, this, where my finger's pointing right now, there is a fuse that is on the bottom of the clock spring, and that fuse box slides up into here. And to get that fuse out, you have to pull this tab and it will slide right out. So I wanted you guys to see that because, well, it's kind of interesting. So something I just realized, I was gonna actually go put it back on, but this is the original piece and this is the new piece. You'll notice that this black box isn't on the new one. I'm assuming that this comes off and we have to attach it to that. I'm guessing it's a different part number. Now, I don't know if all Camaros have this. This is why it's important to just go to your dealer, give them your VIN number and order the part, because from what I understand with these clock springs, if you have a heated steering wheel or if you don't have a heated steering wheel, like there's all kinds of little variables that change the part number. Looks like it pops out by pushing these clips in. I'm gonna try that and see if it works. I'm assuming it will, but you know, I've been surprised so far with this car. So what you gotta do, I was just playing with it, is these four big tabs that you see right here. You gotta compress them all at the same time. I did it with my fingers, and then this should just slide off. Now we're gonna go to this one, and we're gonna slide it onto the new one in the same way that we removed it. Cool thing is there's a little guide right here. So this little piece that's right here goes into that guide. That way you get it straight. And this piece in here the piece inside of this does spin. So try to keep that, you know, in the orientation that it was at. And then that should be good to go. Now we're ready to reinstall it. Right here, I was gonna show you, on that back side where you have to pull that safety tab out, the two tabs that I had to depress are where these holes are. and they won't depress until you pull that orange safety tab out. That's something else to keep a note. This bottom piece here, so if you're facing the steering wheel, it's gonna be on your left side. This fuse piece is gonna clip in right behind it that I just showed you in the B-roll. And then this piece is gonna route back around, go to the right side of your steering wheel and click in. The way you remove this piece is you have to push down on this top. It'll be on the top side, but you gotta push that down with a flathead to remove it. These are the 4 corners where I was telling you that the screws need to be removed from. Back up top. All right, let's talk about this real quick. The clock spring. If you break it, I would go to a dealer to order another one. Don't try to go to Amazon. Don't try to go to eBay. The reason I say that is with the Camaros and the SS's, you got the 1LEs, you got all these different trim levels and things like that. Some of them have heated steering wheels, some of them don't. You got to get the correct clock spring for your configuration. I got kind of lucky. I called the dealer to order it. There was literally one available in the entire state, and they had it overnighted from another part of Arizona into the dealership that I called, and it was available the next day. But online, when I was looking for it, I found that exact part number. It was gonna take 4 weeks for it to arrive. And that's why I say go to your dealership, because if you accidentally order the wrong part number, they'll be like, I think there's 5 part numbers for the clock spring for the Camaros. So if you order the wrong one, you're gonna be a little SOL, like if you have heated steering wheel and you order one without it. Now, fortunately, we were able to get it all fixed and rectified. The only problem that I have right now is whenever you're putting the steering wheel back on, you have those little teeth you have to align. Mine is like 1 tooth off. So it's kind of crooked when I'm driving. I'm gonna have to take it apart and realign it and put it back down, but that's not a big deal. Now, driving with this steering wheel alleviated all of the problems that I have with it. I had 3 big problems, like I mentioned earlier, with the steering wheel. One, I couldn't stand the ergos. Wherever you put your thumbs, I just didn't like the way it felt. The other one that I didn't like was I felt like I was pinching the steering wheel like this instead of actually gripping it like this. Just didn't feel natural to me. The other thing I didn't like about the steering wheel was that it was super slippery. I think suede and Alcantara look great on parts of the car that you don't touch, but on touch points, I think it's ridiculous because it's just gonna get matted up and get oil in it, and it's gonna look like crap after about a year anyway. But this steering wheel has 100% been worth it. I've been driving around on it now for a couple of weeks, and it drives perfectly. Whenever I put my thumbs in there, it feels like my hand's at home. I get a good sturdy grip on it. I like the perforated leather. A couple of concerns that I had for the carbon fiber was the carbon fiber getting really hot and getting a glare from the sun. I don't get a glare from the sun, and I can't really comment on how hot it gets because it's not summertime yet, but I do think it's probably gonna get kind of hot, but thankfully I have the leather portions to hang on to. Just don't wanna grab the top in the middle of the summer. But I'll make sure to have a link for that steering wheel down below. That way you guys can pick one up if you want. I really enjoy those larger paddles. I find that they're way easier to access, especially because I don't always wanna drive at 9 and 3. Sometimes I like to drive at 10 and 2, just when I'm just normally driving. And it's nice to be able to access the paddle shifters from that position. Whereas before, if I was at 10 and 2, I'd have to go to 9 and 3 in order to get the paddle shifter and then go back to 9 and 2. So I feel like the newer steering wheel just gives you a lot more flexibility in the way that you drive. Another thing that I haven't figured out yet, and I'm still working on figuring this out, because on my steering wheel that came with the car, I have that little dial there to turn off the forward collision alert system. For some reason, when I swapped everything over, this one doesn't work. Like, it just does nothing. There was no way for me to turn off the forward collision alert, which I turned off every time I started the car. So I took a little bit of vinyl wrap as a test, put it over the camera at the top of the windshield, and it no longer alerts me. I no longer have to think about turning it off. And I think it's a lifesaver. I couldn't find anything in the manual, and I couldn't find anything in the infotainment as a way to permanently disable the forward collision alert system. And the reason I like to turn it off is whenever you're getting ready to pass someone, if you're going up on them and you gotta get around them real quick, as you're approaching it before you get over, it would just start going crazy. Thankfully, it doesn't hit the brakes or anything, but it was just annoying. So I will get that replaced with a nice solid black window banner later, or like some really dark window tint. And that way we don't gotta worry about it anymore, and it'll look a lot cleaner. So if you were looking for a way to turn off your forward collision alert system, there you go. A little black vinyl wrap does the body good. But replacing the clock spring wasn't too bad. I tried my best to get good camera angles and show you how it worked. I hope that this video helped you understand how you got to get this thing installed and what it takes to do all this. But if anything was confusing, just let me know and ask me any questions you have down in the comment section. I'll do my best to answer all of them. But until next time, guys, I love you. You guys stay sexy.